secular people are the most religious people of all. Now, why would I say that? It sounds counterintuitive. The human species has an incredible capacity for self-deception. We all have certain facets of our humanity that we like to tell ourselves we are immune to. We're confronted with too much evidence in other people to think they're immune to that part of their humanity. But we can at least tell ourselves that we are the exception. And in any area of life that you do that with, you are especially susceptible to that very trait of your humanity, precisely because you think that's where you're safe. Many people would tell themselves, had they been living in continental Europe in the 1930s as Hitler came to power, they would have been the exception. They would have been an Oskar Schindler. Now, of course, we all want to believe that. The reasons why are obvious. The Holocaust was one of the most appalling things that humanity has ever done. And it's comforting to think that the people who participated in it, and the people who just kept quiet and kept their heads down, were human aberrations. The truth is, they were simply humans. And that possibility resides in all of us. And the place where you are most safe is where you are staring that fact directly in the face. The place where you're in the most danger is when you turn your back on it and pretend it isn't there. People want to believe that they would have hidden Anne Frank, that they would have not only risked their life, but the life of their family, your spouse's life, your children's life. And you would have done this for a stranger, having maintained your grip on a moral compass when you're swimming through a society that has slow walked you to a place of believing that this is okay. We absorb part of who we are through osmosis, more than we would like to admit. We are the fish swimming through water, and when somebody calls out, hey, the water's great today, we ask, what's water? You can't really see your own environment. Not objectively, anyway. The same people who believe, without really questioning it, that they would have saved Anne Frank, that they would have been Oskar Schindler, that they would have been Harriet Tubman going back into the South to help facilitate an underground railroad to get other people out. There is a reason why you remember those people. It's because they were the exception, not the rule. If everyone had been doing that, you wouldn't remember any individual names. It would just be, yeah, everybody did that. There's a reason why you remember their names. Are you that convinced you would be the exception? Let's set aside being the type of person who would have gone along with it and kept their head down and just said, it's none of my business, which that's the easiest and most honest position to take, because that's what the vast majority of people did. But have you ever asked yourself, with the right parents, the right economic struggles. The Reich PTSD from World War I, one of the most awful wars that was ever fought, one of the most traumatic. Months on end in trenches, feet away from the enemy. First time that chemical warfare was ever used, and you were also still in a fighting environment that was barbaric enough to use bayonets too. So all of the worst of the old warfare and the new warfare. If you were dealing with all of that, and everyone else around you honestly believed that this was okay and had slow walked you there, have you ever asked yourself, given just the right combination, is it even possible that maybe instead of saving Anne Frank, you would have been her guard at Auschwitz and been telling yourself that it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it, it's ultimately for the greater good? Yeah, it's ugly to get there, but society will be better on the other side. The areas that you refuse to stop and look at are the ones that you are in most danger of falling prey to. And that's why secular people have become the most religious people of all. Because they've made the mistake of thinking that the inclination to be religious is external rather than internal. I'm beyond that. I'm immune to that. Those poor, silly, not very intelligent, not very educated peasants with their superstitious beliefs and their need to have a security blanket because they can't handle the reality. They believe these comforting things, but I am purely rational. And yet we see it as these very people who are often capable of being the most irrational of all, the most dogmatic of all, the most religiously fervent zealots of all, the most eager crusaders of all, the most eager to oppress those of other beliefs, the most quick to force conversion under threat. We'll get into some examples of this later, but I want to tell you what got me thinking about all of this. I was watching a podcast this week and I saw some questions being debated between two people on opposite sides of the fence. And I thought about if the answers had been just slightly different, how common they actually would have been. So allow me to create a fictional scenario here. For most people, morality is not something that is universal. They decide it. Whatever they decide is acceptable is what is acceptable. Whatever they decide is unacceptable is unacceptable. They do not believe in an authority beyond themselves. There is no universal morality. There is no higher morality. They are quite literally the God of their own universe, and they have decreed their own set of 10 commandments. Now, that could be way to the right, and you could be dealing with a total Puritan. That could be way to the right in an Islamic sense, and you could be talking about, a man in the Middle East who arranges a marriage for his daughter who's still a child, probably after female circumcision has been inflicted on her. It could be somebody way to the left who has decided that anti-racism, anti-fascism, and I say these words in the way that they are being used, not based on what they should mean, if you were to go purely off of definitions. If you were to look at what a fascist is by definition, what a real racist is by definition, and say, I am anti that, I oppose that, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people who use that as a label and what they mean by it, the things that they call racist or fascist that actually do not meet the definitions of fascism and racism. Whatever your own set of 10 Commandments may be, it seems like in our society, everybody has their own set. And almost everybody believes their set of 10 Commandments should reign supreme. It's not just that they believe that that's what's right for them, although that is usually the claim. That's clearly not what they believe, because they do try to force it on other people. If you believe that morality is subjective and not objective, well, then you can't claim that you think slavery is wrong. You can merely claim that it's wrong for you. But no one makes that claim, myself included. I think slavery is objectively wrong. But I don't think morality is subjective to begin with. The problem is that the people who do claim that slavery is wrong because they declare it to be wrong, but they declare it to be wrong for you. And they don't seem to stop and recognize the inherent contradiction in the things that they're claiming to believe. That everyone gets to decide morality for themselves, and also they have decided the morality for you, and you must comply with it. This is part of what I'm talking about, that secular people are the most religious people out there. But to get on with this example, if morality is subjective, let's take sexual issues as an example. Okay, there's going to be people who will say that sex outside of marriage is where the morality line is crossed. Most people are going to disagree with that, but there's going to be some people where that's the line for them. And if morality is subjective, then that means that's right for them. You go one step beyond that, and other people will say, well, the line is crossed at homosexuality. And I want to be clear that in all of these examples, I am not talking about people. I am talking about the actions, okay? So even in my examples, I'm not talking about homosexual people being immoral. I'm talking about if someone were to make the case that homosexual sex is immoral. And I'm not even making the case right now, one way or another, whether that's true. I'm just saying for some people, they would draw their line there. And we all know that is indeed the case. There are people out there who would draw the line there. But I just want to be clear that in all of my examples, I'm not talking about the person who is tempted to engage in sex outside of marriage, the person who is tempted to engage in homosexual sex. I'm talking about the acts. In all of my examples from here on out, I'm talking about the act of doing it, not the temptation or inclination towards it. You go one step beyond that. Some people would say that they draw the line at what today would be called kink, what previous generations would have called degeneracy. It's where there is built-in degradation. You are deliberately dehumanizing someone into an object, or masochism is involved. You want pain to be involved. There is a twisted element to it. Maybe you're into strangulation, whatever. But whether you're bringing pain into it, whether you're bringing dehumanizing treatment of another person into it, that's where the line is drawn. Other people would, okay, let's go a step further. As long as that's consensual, their line would be drawn at commoditizing it. If you're prostituting yourself, if you're on OnlyFans, you're taking the degeneracy and you're marketing it. You're turning it into a commodity and getting others involved in it. Keep going as far out as you need to go until you find the place that would be your line, because my point today is not where should the line be. Today, my point is that everybody has their own line. So find it. The point where for you, you would say, everything up into here is fine. Everything after that point, that's where it becomes immoral. Now back up one step. To pick a random example, let's go to homosexuality for an example. If your line was one step beyond that, you said the line of morality was at the kink, at the degeneracy, at the dehumanizing of people. And so I've said, let's back up one space, and that brings you to homosexuality, which is not that. You're not dehumanizing anyone. So this is within the realm of what you think is right. Now let's say you meet someone who says, no, my line of morality ends there. That's immoral. And once again, I'm talking about the act, not the people. Last time I'm going to say that, but that applies to everything I say in this podcast. If the person that you're talking to says, no, I think the line of morality is there at homosexual sex, what would be the most common answer that you would hear from the person who thinks, no, that's within the line of what is morally okay? It's the kink, it's the dehumanizing is where it starts to become immoral. What would they say about the thing that is one step inside of the line of the moral? Over and over again, you hear people say something usually along the line of, there's nothing wrong with that. I cheer those people on. And it's almost always those words. What I'm asking you to do right now is not to contemplate whether or not homosexual sex is right or wrong. That's not my point. My point is, did that statement that just came out of your mouth, I would cheer them on, did that come from you? Now we all want to immediately say yes. Why? Because the alternative is terrifying. If it didn't come from you, where did it come from? Now, that's a more interesting question. Stop and ask yourself, I would cheer that person on. Would you use that phrase about your own relationships? You're in a loving marital relationship with your spouse, or you're in a committed relationship with your lover, whoever. It's not my business. The point is, picture that person. Do you want your best friend there cheering you on? That's actually a very bizarre and unnatural phrase to use in this context. Now, a lot of people might say, okay, well, I misspoke. I don't think you did. Because we hear this phrase over and over again. You know, the Bible has this verse, out of the heart the mouth speaketh. Now, sometimes we all misspeak. I'm not saying that everything you say comes out the way you intended it, but more times than not, it does. And a lot of times we want to say that's not what I meant, not because it's not what you meant, but because you realize that what you meant is problematic in some way. So if someone were to point out that the phrase of saying you would cheer anyone on in their sexuality is actually a very weird and unnatural claim to make, that is not the language you would use about your own sexuality, or about your friend's sexuality, or your family members. And you don't talk about, yeah, when mom and dad go at it, I cheer them on. I mean, like, this is not the way people talk about it. And when you see phrases pop up in society that suddenly get repeated, for example, when Joe Biden and Donald Trump debated each other before the election, and once again, this is not about whether you're pro-Biden or pro-Trump, it's about the example. And Joe Biden was having a really bad dementia day, and he broke down on that stage basically the entire time, couldn't get a coherent sentence out of him, was staring off into space. It was bad. We all saw it. It was bad. It was very, very bad. If you've forgotten how bad it is, go back and watch the tapes because they're still out there. And the media had been lying. I'm just going to call it what it was. We had been seeing it for years at that point, and really severely for months, and they had been insisting no. We saw it just from the clips. There wasn't basically a single clip that came out of the man that you were not seeing it in. And they were saying no, which is why I say they were lying, because they were actually around him. So if we could see it from clips, and they're saying they missed it in the clips, and they missed it during all of the time that they were interacting with him that we weren't, bull. You were lying. You were lying because you wanted to control the outcome politically. But all of a sudden, everyone in the media, go watch, there are compilations where you just see one person in the media, it becomes 5, it becomes 10, it becomes 20, it becomes 50. And they're all saying the same phrase. He's sharp as a tack. Sharp as a tack. Sharp as a tack. He is sharp as a tack. Sharp as a tack. Now, sure, there was a day and time, decades and decades and decades ago, where that phrase would have been part of the normal vernacular, but it had not been for a long time. And all of a sudden, you didn't just have one person saying it, and people kind of going, that's a weird way to put it. Everyone was saying it. They were parroting each other. That phrase didn't come from them. It was a scripted response that they were mimetically imitating based off of the people in their tribe. And I would argue that when you say you would cheer someone on in a sexual pursuit that is within the line of what you consider to be moral, wherever that line may be, let's take it all the way down to the end and say you've only got a problem if it's non-consensual, and everything inside of that, you're good with the prostitution, commoditizing of it, whatever. You cheer them on as though that is actually a normal phrase to use about sexuality, about the most intimate experience in life, to speak about the most intimate, one of the most meaningful experiences of life, the source of more life, the very foundation of existence, as though it's a sports arena event. I don't think that response naturally came from you. Now, once again, people might say, well, okay, I misspoke. No, because you're not the only one who said it that way. I don't think you misspoke. I think you said exactly what you meant to say. It's only that now that it's being pointed out how weird it is, There is a need to pull away from it, because if it's not coming from you, then you have to face the uncomfortable question. Where is it coming from? The truth is, part of being in a culture means that you are vulnerable to inception. Did you see the Leo DiCaprio film Inception? The idea that someone else gets into your mind, and if you realize that the thought comes from someone else, you will reject it. But if they can get deep enough, if they can burrow deep enough into your mind to make you think that that thought came from you, that's inception. And it can be deranging. His wife kills herself because when you can't tell the difference between your thoughts and someone else's thoughts, between reality and what you perceive to be reality, you've lost your mind. That becomes a frightening place, which is why a lot of people don't want to ask this question. Is it possible that some of your positions, some of the phrases that come out of your mouth, some of the things you defend and think you believe are not your ideas? What if they're inception? Not in like a magical voodoo way, but just in a programming way, based off of the people in your social circle, what they're saying. Just like you saw that phrase spread throughout journalists. It was only journalists who were using the phrase sharpest attack, because they're all in the same circle. Is it possible that your ideas have more to do with the people in your office, the people you went to college with, the influencers that you reinforce those ideas with every day by listening to them, than they do with you? That's an uncomfortable thought. But that is actually a lot closer to reality than thinking that everything in your head, every belief in your heart, and every word that comes out of your mouth actually originated with you. And you're even less likely to acknowledge that very real possibility if you're secular and you believe 150%, you are not capable of having that happen. You are superior to that. You would know you're above it. So let's circle back around to secular people are the most religious people out there. They believe that religiosity is a trait of religion. They have it entirely backwards. Religiosity is a trait of humanity. All human beings are religious. It's just that some people funnel that over here into religion. They channel it in a safe direction, and other people believe that they don't have a problem with it. And so their floodgates are wide open and it overflows their life. Let me give you one example. This one coming from the podcast I was listening to. There was a very staunch Christian who was talking about not wanting evolution to be taught to his children in school. Once again, this is not about whether or not you agree with the issue. It's about the point underneath it. And the person that he was talking to used to be a school teacher. And he became very, very adamant, repeating over and over again, evolution is a fact. Evolution is a fact. That's why we have to teach it to the kids. We have to teach it to the kids because evolution is a fact. Now, on the podcast, they did say exactly what I was thinking at that point. It did get called out. And he said, no, Evolution is a theory. Evolution is not a scientific fact. Evolution is a scientific theory. Now, once again, this is not about whether or not you fully believe in evolution, you fully disbelieve in evolution, you're somewhere in the middle. That's not the point. The point is that the instinct to declare this thing to be untouchable is a religious instinct. Creationists would do the same thing. They would say, this is the Bible. It's a word of God. The Bible says God created the world in 7 days. You can't question it because it's the Bible. Same instinct. Exact same instinct. Evolution is not scientific fact. A scientific fact is that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It does that every single day. It will continue to do that every single day until that star burns out. That's a fact. Evolution is a theory. Now, I'm not saying that means it's made up. There is evidence to support the theory. And there are also holes in the theory, which is why it is not yet fact. There are still some existing problems with it. If there weren't, then it would actually be a fact. Right now, it's not a fact. It's a theory. It's a work in progress for which there is some evidence and some problems. Now, you might believe in that theory and think it's on the right track and we just need to perfect it. Or you might be somebody who thinks it's totally on the wrong track. That's not the point. The point is that the need to claim that it is God. It is scientific fact. It is God. You cannot question it. That's a religious instinct. That is not a scientific one. In fact, that is anti-scientific. True science says, question even the things we take for granted. Everything should be questioned. In a day when most people believed that the sun rotated around the earth, because the earth is the center of the universe, all things rotate around us. That was the belief, and had been the belief for centuries. Science was the one who said, I know we all accept this. I know we all say, everybody knows this. But you know what? It's not true. And here's why it's not true. Here's the evidence it's not true. The earth is actually spinning around the sun. And we're not in the center of the universe. Science has always been about questioning even the things that we think we know. Anyone who says, trust the science. You want to know what another word for trust is? Faith. They're saying have faith in the science, which is an anti-science statement. They believe they're coming from a place of pure rationality, pure science, but their words belie that because they're using religious arguments. And once again, you could say, well, that's misspeaking. No, it's not, because this is what they all say. If one person said this, you could say, okay, they misspoke. But it's not one person. This is consistently what they say. Trust the science. The science is settled. That's one of the most anti-scientific things I've ever heard. Science is never settled. Science is always questioning itself, always building on itself, always collapsing and refiguring things out to say, no, we've arrived at the end and everything we believe now is the answer. There's not a drop of error in it and there will never be anything new to add on to it. We are complete. We are God. Don't question the holy text. This is religion. That is the most anti-scientific thinking you could ask for. I mean, imagine, to go back to the evolution example, the instinct to say, that is a scientific fact. Okay, the scientific argument would not have been to declare, this is untouchable, which is what that statement is. Untouchable being sacred. It would be to actually make a case. It would be to walk through the actual evidence for evolution. Why am I saying that would be the scientific thing to do? Okay, picture Oppenheimer. I am Doc Brown. I have my DeLorean. I have flux capacitored you back to the 1940s. I've given you whatever expertise you need. Poof. You are now brilliant enough to be part of the Manhattan Project. Congratulations. So you're there. You're working with Robert Oppenheimer to make the atomic bomb. And you say to him, Bob, I think your equation is wrong. Which way do you think that a true scientist like Oppenheimer would have responded to that statement? Do you think he would have said, my equation is scientific fact. How you cannot question it. It's fact. It's fact. Or do you think he would have said, what's wrong about it? How'd you make a case? And then either agreed with you of, you know what, you're right, there is an error there. Or said, no, here's where you're getting off track. You see, this actually works this way, A, B, C, D, and made a case. My money's that Oppenheimer would have done the second. He would have made a case. He wouldn't have had a religious reaction to you questioning his beliefs, because a religious reaction to your beliefs is not science. That's not how science works. You're not attached to your beliefs in science. You're going down this rabbit trail. You're not attached to the trail. You're going down it because your reason tells you that's the right way. If you walk smack into a wall and go, whoopsie, wrong turn, you don't just like bang, bang, bang your head against that wall. You go elsewhere because you're not attached. That's reason. When you defend it as this is sacred, this is known, we all agree, that's religion. I mean, look at climate activists. And once again, this is not about whether you believe that we're on the verge of a climate crisis, whether you think there are climate issues, but it is not anywhere near the extent that people are catastrophizing it to be, whether you think that it's all just the natural cycles of the earth and it's entirely bull. That's not the point. Wherever you fall on any of these issues is not the point. The point is the reaction to them. So, if you point out to a climate activist a scientific fact that because of the extra C2 in the atmosphere, aside from the global warming that may be causing, there is also the scientific fact that it has caused the earth to significantly green, and areas that were once unusable have become usable farmland, and that is part of why we have an abundance of food, and that part is actually a good thing. Let's say you did that in a way that was even saying that climate change is real, it's doing bad things, but it's doing this one good thing too, so how do we keep the good things while getting rid of the bad things? Let's say you even approach it that way. For a true climate activist, I mean like the ones that are out of their frickin' minds, the Greta Thunbergs, I'm going to dye the Venice Canal green people, okay? They are going to lose their freaking mind for that question. A question that is rooted in the scientific fact that the world is greening. They would scream at you, climate denier! What does that mean? Blasphemer. Calling someone a denier is not a scientific case. That's a name that means you don't believe what I believe. You don't believe what I believe to be sacred. Blasphemer. That's not making a case. Neither is, I'm scared out of my mind, so I'm going to blow up the Mona Lisa if you don't give me what I want. This is science. This is not science. It's not producing a scientific way of thinking. We see this all across the secular world, okay? It's less now, although it is far from gone. There are still many states that are implementing it and many activists still pushing for it, but the tide has at least turned. That doesn't mean people need to get complacent, but at the height of the trans thing, back when you've got people threatening to rape J.K. Rowling if she doesn't say the phrase, trans women are women. You must raise your hand and Heil Hitler. My words must come out of your mouth. I want to hear you say the creed. Convert at sword point. And once again, it doesn't really matter which side of the issue you come down on right now for the point of this argument. Their case was that if someone identifies a certain way, they are that thing. They are that thing so much that nothing else can factor in. So if you have someone who has been a male athlete his entire life, grown up completely into adulthood and beyond, with testosterone surging through his body, and now says, I see myself as a woman, I identify as a woman. He's allowed to box in women's boxing and crack the skull of one of the best female fighters on the planet in about 10 seconds. Without telling her that he was not biologically female, so she could even choose. He's allowed to not only do that, but to violate her by not giving her a choice, hiding the information from her. Because his ID cannot be questioned. To this day, you have people in prisons. You have men who are in there for violent rape. Specific cases where they have raped multiple times, multiple different victims, have no history of any kind of gender confusion anywhere in their past. And all of a sudden, they say they're a woman. And because the religion dictates, if they say the creed, that is the new reality. These rapists have been put in female prisons in the same cell with women whom they have raped. In some cases, even impregnated. Beaten severely. All of which was entirely predictable. You cannot take a male sex criminal who is much stronger than women, who has every reason to conveniently identify this way, and put him in with the female population and expect anything less than this to happen. And yet the religious people said, he is their God. He is magical. He is untouchable. Anyone who makes a self-ID is untouchable. That is sacred. You cannot question it. You cannot question their motives, even if they have a history of convictions for rape, and are only saying this now to get into a female prison where they will have access to new victims. You can't question that. You can't even factor that in. Nothing else can be factored in at that point. They are deities. They are the untouchables, the unsulliables. Not a single one of them. They are the only population on earth who doesn't have a bad apple among the group. Every single person who says the words without surgeries, without anything, without histories, who says the words, I now identify as this thing, must suddenly, everything else comes off the table. You must give them everything they want. That is not science. That is not science, and we all know it. There are scientific differences in bone structure, in muscle mass, in lung capacity, in heart size, in strength, in hormones, in on and on and on. In fact, when all that's left of you is your bones 1,000 years from now, and an anthropologist comes and digs you up to try to figure our wacky civilization out, he won't know your name. He won't know what clothes you wore, the way you dressed. He won't know how you identified, how you saw yourself. Let's say even genuinely saw yourself. Take, the prior example out of it. He will look at your bones, all that will be left of you. And he will go, male or female. And that will be the case, regardless of everything else. Even if we wanted to change that for you, that part we can't. And yet it is secular people that were pushing this exclusively. These were not religious people. As far as people who are part of an organized, recognized religion and are following the tenets of that religion as expressed in its texts. I'm not talking about people who hijack someone else's religion and then wear it around like Hannibal Lecter wearing the security guard's face around. I'm talking about people who are actually using the texts themselves of Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hindu, and are actually pointing to the text saying, yes, as someone who is observant and devout in this, I believe that. That was not the people doing that. It was almost exclusively secular people, and a few religious people were the Hannibal Lecters. They are not actually practicing the faith that they've attached themselves onto like leeches. They've stolen the name and made up their own religion for it. The point is, religion is a human trait. You can channel that into a religion that has already been outlined over centuries. You can channel that into self and become the deity of your own universe. I am God, and I will issue my own 10 commandments, and all will bow before me. I will make others chant the slogan when I raise my fist and declare Black Lives Matter and tell you, you better do the same thing or you're going to get hurt. When I go up to a celebrity and stick a microphone in their face and yell at them to say it, you say it, say Free Palestine, say it, say it, say it, say it. That's religion. That's religion. It's zealous religion. It's religious extremism. It's the worst kind of religion. It's not the productive kind that you live for yourself and that is based on having a profound connection to the transcendent that inspires you to treat others well. It's not that. It's the worst kind. It's the crusading kind. And the reason why secular people are more susceptible to it than anyone else is precisely because they think that's where they're safe. They have lied to themselves that this is a trait that some people have because they've been indoctrinated that way since childhood or something along that line. The truth is, religiosity is a human trait. You've seen people practicing it as druids and cults and paganism and all throughout history. Now, they might have practiced a different religion from region to region, but the one thing that was consistent was that they all had a religion, all of them, all of them. Do you think it's scientific to think that you are that much of a mutated anomaly? You are a frickin' X-Man times 1,000,000? Evolution made such a huge leap forward with you that that's not in you. The people who wind up committing the worst atrocities are the people who thought that they were incapable of doing anything wrong. They weren't evil people. That was the presumption. And if you are not a bad person, and you cannot do bad things, then whatever you do is not bad. Even if you're gassing 1.5 million Jewish children, 1.5 million children. I'm not somebody who is naive enough to say that all people are evil or all people are good. I think Solzhenitsyn had it right. The line between good and evil runs through every heart. We all have both in us, all of us, every single one of us. If you think you don't, you are more susceptible than anyone else to becoming an actual monster. You have to, forgive me, but you have to be Harry Potter. The Sorting Hat was going to put him in Slytherin. That was not wrong. He actually would have made a good Slytherin. Not least because he was carrying around a piece of Voldemort inside of him. Harry became who he was, not because he was incapable of becoming Voldemort, but because he realized he was capable. He chose Gryffindor. He chose. You have to look the monster in the mirror, and then you have to choose. If you ignore that monster and say, he's not there, he ain't a part of me, I'm not capable of doing anything wrong. Everything I do is right. You probably won't use those words, but they will be the gist. That's how you actually become a Voldemort. I guarantee you that most of the people who became Nazi guards, most of the people who were Soviet guards at the gulags. After Stalin died and the documentation was released, there was mass suicide among those guards because they realized they actually were the bad guys. They believed up until that point that what they were doing was right, that the people up in those gulags really were bad people. They were doing the right thing, man. They were doing the right thing for the motherland. And then they found out, no, you weren't. No. Every time you beat someone up, every time you shot a man in the face, every time you starved a child, no, man. You were the bad guy. That's a terrible idea to be there. I had a family friend who, when he was in college, went home for vacation with his college roommate. Found out his college roommate's father was an honest-to-God Nazi. By which I mean he had served in the military as a member of the Nazi Party during World War II. And he was surprised when he found this out partway through the vacation because this was such a nice guy. He was not a hate-filled man. Nice guy. And he couldn't reconcile that. And he asked him to make it add up for him. And that German man told him, yeah, we heard the stories on the fronts. We were not back home. We were on the fronts. And we heard the stories that back home, millions of people were being exterminated in camps and all of the rest of it. But we knew that wasn't true. We knew it wasn't true. Our people, these were our neighbors, they weren't capable of that. They weren't capable of that. That was freaking Allied propaganda to make us look like monsters. So we're not capable of being monsters like that. They're trying to make us sound like we're freaking demons. I know these people. They're my neighbors. I've lived my whole life in this country. We wouldn't freaking do that. He got home and found out, shit. We did that. I was fighting for that. I pray to God that none of us ever find ourselves in that position. And the only way that you stand a chance of not ending up in that position is by realizing you could be. Because if you think, no, I know my neighbors. No, I know myself. No, I know my political party. No, I know, pick your group. I don't care. Whatever group it is. I'm not capable of it. That is a free pass. That is a blank check. Most dangerous kind out there. If you don't realize that you, as a secular person, have deeply embedded religious instincts in you. Anytime you go, I'm assuming you've seen Lord of the Rings. You remember that scene where Frodo makes it to the elves and they say then in fellowship, and Bilbo's there. Sweet little Bilbo. He's just a nice little old man. Sweet Bilbo. And Bilbo wants to hold the ring for just a second. And Frodo pulls back, and all of a sudden it's, ah! Every time you do that, that sure as hell is not science. That sure as hell is not reason. Now sure, we all get passionate about things, but the that's not just passion. That's something else. And it ain't reason. It ain't science. It sure as hell is not something you should trust to be safe or moral. So my thought for the week is, A, look these realities in the mirror and realize that your religiosity is part of you being a human. You have to accept it's there. You have to decide where you're going to channel it, and you have to be on guard about it popping up in places where it does not belong, and hold yourself to account when you do. And 2, spend some time thinking about the idea of inception. How many of the words that come out of your mouth are you just repeating phrases that you heard in church? I'm not talking even about the text. I'm talking about, like, there are very specific phrases that they're not out of the Bible, but they're religiously coded phrases that people will say to the point where they're practically meaningless. But it's a signal. It's a signal that I'm this type of person, that I would use this phraseology. Liberals have the same thing. Any extremist groups do, whether it's far right, far left, radical elements of religion, radical elements of the secular. Whether it's political, whether it's ideological, whether it's just the way you think about yourself. How many of your thoughts came from you? Seriously. The way that you treat yourself. The way that maybe you commoditize yourself. And that might not be something as extreme as being a prostitute on the street. Might be OnlyFans. Might not be that extreme. It might not be selling yourself sexually, but it may be commoditizing yourself with your carefully curated social media accounts, trying to put yourself forward as a product. Buy me, buy me, buy me. May not even be for money. Your payment may be the clicks. And you're becoming less and less you, saying more and more outrageous things because it is the outrageous posts that get the clicks. The political positions that you believe, are they even consistent? I mean, if you were somebody who was shouting, "Believe all women," were you still saying that on October 7th? Or did it suddenly become, "Believe all women except Jewish women"? Are you even consistent about these things? Or when that happens, do you claim, well, it's nuanced all of a sudden? Something that was clear-cut, no means no, consent, suddenly, well, it's nuanced. Really? When you're saying that you want full equality for women, you hate the gender pay gap, so on and so forth. Are you also wearing a keffiyeh when you protest? The compulsory garment that women have to wear because men tell them to? What do you do with the story of that poor singer in her 20s right now who's been sentenced to 74 lashes for taking her hijab off while she was singing on YouTube? Not even to a live audience, YouTube. And these are the easy questions. The questions of consistency. Do you actually have principles, or do you only have teams? Does your principle hold even when your team violates it? Did you say, "Believe all women" one day, and at least on October 7th, when they were like, "Those lying Jewish bitches," or whatever, go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, no, we don't attack the victims. No victim blaming. Did you at least do that when it was your team? Or at most, did you keep quiet? Or maybe even join in? These are the easy questions. The questions about when you use phrases like you cheer someone on in their sexual fetishes. Have you ever stopped, like we did today, and asked yourself, how did that unnatural way of referring to that? And once again, it's not about whether or not the thing that you're defending is actually okay or not. But to refer to it in that way, how did that phrase come out of my mouth? Did that really come from me? Am I someone who actually does think of sex as like a sports arena? That's something that you're meant to be cheered on in by other people? Do you want to be cheered on? Or do you think of your wife, your husband, in a way that would kind of make you queasy if someone actually used that language about it? Like, dude, what are you talking about? Okay, this is private and personal between me and the person that I love more than anyone else. And I'm not even talking about being a prude here, like you can't talk about sexuality, but to talk about it in that way. And to assume that that came from you, just like the Biden was sharpest attack. How many of your thoughts are actually your thoughts, and how many of them have been put there by outside forces so many times, pushing them deeper and deeper and deeper until you've come to accept that they are your thoughts? Gay marriage wasn't legalized until Obama. That's how recent it is for the United States, okay? Up until then, the majority of the population was against it. And once again, this is not about do you support gay marriage or not. That's not the point. Everyone randomly changed their opinion at the same time. It's not about the issue. I've known many gay people that are incredibly good people. It's not about that. It's about, did you actually arrive at the opinions that you hold on your own? Were you maybe legitimately convinced by someone? Because that is legitimate. Sometimes it's not just that your thoughts have to all originate with you. We'd not be able to build on technology if that was the case. If I had to not go to school, I needed to be Isaac Newton and discover gravity for myself and outline. We'd never get anywhere. But did someone make a case that you can remember and go, yeah, it was this. That's what changed my mind and it made me think about it. Okay, because that's legitimate. Who made the case that said we should be cheering on gay people as they have sex? Who made that case? I'd really be interested to know. We have to be careful about becoming parrots. We have to be careful about becoming mouthpieces. Not because of gay marriage, not because of these issues, but because even if they are a small minority, there are bad actors out there. There are full-fledged racists. They are in the incredible minority at this point. But they've got an audience. There are the people trying to co-opt religion They love to scream Christ is king only if they can scream it into the face of a Jew. Let me ask you this. Have you ever heard one of them say Christ is Lord? Better yet, have you ever heard one of them say Christ is King of Kings? Yeah, me neither. They like that phrase because it's about power. They don't even know enough about Christ to know that when they tried to force him to become king, he ran away. He would not let them make him king. Now people who claim to respect him, follow his lead, worship him, are trying to do it again. When Pontius Pilate asked him, "Are you a king?" He basically told him, "Not in the way you mean. My kingdom is not of this world. I'm not an earthly king, not a king in the sense that you mean it." And yet what are they screaming? The very thing that he said no to. Hannibal Lecter wearing around the security guard's face. It ain't about Christ when they do that. Have you chanted one of these slogans without thinking about it? Have you gone down rabbit holes to the point that you think that the earth is flat? And you can't explain how you can literally get on a plane from LA and fly west, never turn around, fly west and keep flying west and end up back in LA? How is that possible if the earth is flat? This is why the internet becomes dangerous for some people. Not because the internet is bad. There are great things about it. There are bad things about it. But if you don't even realize that you're susceptible to the religion, that you're susceptible to the religious, that you're susceptible to the water temperature being turned slowly, slowly up till you're the frog that cooks in the water, that you're susceptible to inception, and be on guard of, when I'm listening to this person for the first time, do I want to start steeping my mind in this water? Do I want to end up thinking like this person? Because if you keep listening to them, you're gonna. That doesn't mean that you only listen to the people that you agree with, but if you're habitually taking it in, you don't need to habitually take in stuff that is bad for you. We all splurge on junk food once in a while. We all have a dessert now and then. But if 4 or 5 times a day you're doing that, you're going to have a problem. Realize that you are susceptible to these things because you're a human being. You are a mortal. You're not God. You're a mortal. All mortals are flawed. All mortals are capable of both good and bad. All mortals are susceptible to religious impulses. All mortals are susceptible to bad ideas. Sometimes they are even masked in the idea of science. I mean, in Nazi Germany, they co-opted science. I mean, they made up total fake studies leading up to the Nazis where they were arguing that Jews had a larger circumference of head that they had measured. Science says that the Jews are actually a different species because they have a larger head. In the South, slave South, people tend to point to the fact that Southerners were, at least in theory, a lot of them Christians, meaning that they went to church on Sunday, as far as whether that makes you Christian or not, just because you live in a society where that's the only acceptable thing to do, that's very different from, are you actually practicing it? Are you actually devout? But one thing we do know is that they were evolutionists. Jeff Davis's vice president, what was his name? Alexander something. Can't think of his name. You can look him up. He gave a speech where he said that the reason that the South was going to win, the Confederacy was going to last, was because the Union, the North, was built on a religious document, religious superstition, the Declaration of Independence, the idea that all men were created equal. That was silly. That was the Bible. That was the Garden of Eden story. And now, thanks to Darwin, we know that that's not true. We know we didn't all come from the same ancestors. We didn't all come from Adam and Eve. Black people aren't people. They're a different species. They're not actually human. So see, it's totally fine that we enslaved them. That was the excuse. The excuse was not Christianity. The excuse was Darwin. Religion seeps in everywhere. And you're in the most danger to it if you do not realize that and you think you're some sort of mutated exception to it. You're not. And if you don't know where you're being religious, that's the scariest part of all, because you're being religious somewhere. That just means you're extremely blind to it. Better to know where your religion is being directed than to have it just submerging your life to the point that it's all religion and therefore you don't recognize any of it. It's all religious zealots. It's all causes. It's all crusades. It's all me versus them, convert at the point of a sword. Just what I've been thinking about this week. So if it's something that you think that someone out there would enjoy hearing or would benefit from hearing, feel free to share it. And I hope that you come back again next week. In the meantime, have a good week, my friends.